Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. I stepped out of the house yesterday at 11 o'clock at night from a nice centrally air-conditioned abode into a sweltering Buffalo night. It was just, suffocating humidity. This is the time of year I hate. Everybody loves loves 90-degree temperatures. I despise them. I would prefer fall and winter over, if you can believe it, over summer, but that's just me. We are joined by the beardless Kevin Allen, and I have to say, because Kevin just revealed to us before we started that he bought an electric razor, and I just have to tell you, I used to try my father's electric razor, and my face got really, really red and really, really swollen using an electric razor. I don't know why. I could never use it.
It never happens to me.
Yeah, no, it was terrible. It looked like I had sunburn for sitting outside for like 10 hours. So I've always just used the razor, and obviously I'm not using it at all with the beard that I have. But anyway, if you want to touch on that, Kevin, go ahead. If not,
it was just time. The war's over. I filed my papers to get out of the North Carolina regiment or whatever I was in, and I'm ready to join the civil society again. So,
okay.
I got a couple of things I wanted to talk. Do either of you guys watch Real Sports?
Real
to the Blue Moon.
I think it's one of the best shows on television, and they do a really good job of looking at a lot of sports issues. And they did a piece in their most recent one. I don't know when it's on regularly. I just, get it on demand. But on the what we had talked about before, the trading card situation. And it was really fascinating because they basically found the nouveau card guys. It's been carried for years by Russ and me and a couple other guys, guys that, we've been collecting cards since we were kids, we're interested in them. We keep track of them and so forth. But these are new guys. Like one guy was a realtor, and he was making $50,000 to $60,000 a year. And when they ask him now what he makes, he said millions, just millions. And, he proved it he took a private jet to go to the National. And he had a suitcase full of $500,000 cash. He went to buy things, and then they followed what he was doing at the National, and he had $300,000 or $400,000 in sales. And then they had an 18-year-old kid who's also, his collection is worth $20 or $30 million as well. And they just talked about the prices. There's a guy there who was seemed like a big time businessman. Like I don't know that anybody had ever heard of him before he was on the show. Maybe they had, but and he said he went back and reviewed the stock market and baseball card prices, and the baseball card prices over the last 20 years have outstripped the Wall Street. So, all this little hobby that we've had is quite the big business these days.
It is. The only thing I would add, Kev, is that in the pandemic, it hit the all-time high. So you do kind of wonder when it's going to level off. And a lot of it does have to do with the graded cards. And if that market ever gets soft, like all of a sudden they find issues with grading or whatever, these people's collections could be really devalued. Still going to have great cards, but not what they are now. And I do think there's possibility of that happening down the road.
Yeah, this is my take on that. I would say that there is a much better chance of that happening with the newer cards than with the older cards. I think they're okay. And, they did a story about those little film clip cards that they're doing now. I forget what they're called.
NFTs.
Yeah, NFTs. Yeah, we've even seen it in the NHL now. I know Matthew Tkachuk came out with something for charity. And
so did Austin Matthews.
Austin Matthews, yeah. And they're doing all those. And one of these guys they had on there, he had got into these and spent $200,000 on them. And then his collection immediately skyrocketed to 20 million. And then, as he said, we had the anticipated adjustment. So I was assuming he was going to say that, his collection now is worth 400,000, but it went from $20 million to $12 million. So,
right.
I think,
and that's what I'm talking about. Look, I think the card companies are doing well. I think there's a demand for what they're making. I think the card companies are doing a good job. But I do think if you think that you're going to always get a Gem Mint 10 and go get it graded, you're going to have, that's a very slim market.
Well,
and I think
two
that's where you could run it.
The 10s are hard to get. So,
yeah, two observations here. One, based on a previous discussion we had, in terms of getting a card graded. I'm sorry, I would be scared out of my mind. Say, for example, I had a Gaudy Babe Ruth from the early 30s, and I was sending it to get graded. And you're sending it through the mail to get graded. And I know you're insuring it, but it's a card that is irreplaceable. I don't care. You know what I'm saying? It's like if I could drive someplace and have it graded, that'd be one.
You could do it at a show. You could do it at a show.
Yeah, you can do it at a show. It costs more. But, this is what I would say. Life has risks. And, I have been involved in this hobby for a long time.
Yes.
And, even though people complain about things getting lost in the mail, it doesn't happen all that often.
Well,
no, it doesn't happen a lot.
I'm the one it's going to happen to. That's my.
I got screwed out of a $25 card this year, but it doesn't happen. That's like 1 out of a million transactions.
Yeah,
who knows how?
That's right. So.
And the other thing was, and this is back in the day when I was collecting heavily in the 80s, you'd get what was it, Beckett's?
Yeah, Beckett.
Okay. And say I had a Ryan Sandberg rookie at that point, and it was only a few years old. And say the card, was $25 at that point with the arrow going up. You go to any dealer in the Buffalo area and you say, okay, I want $25 for the Ryan Sandberg. There's no way you're getting $25.
No, you don't get book value for anything.
Right. You get like what? 60%.
If you go to a dealer, 50-55%. That's what you get.
Right. Yeah, because you're selling it to a guy wholesale so that he can get retail. That's the problem. Right. You need to sell, if you want to get full value, you've got to sell it to someone who's looking.
And eBay just raised their postage. Like, it's just, you've got to really be on the ball to make some big money. I did want to mention to W1 John, or W1, sorry, I don't know what your real name is. Just message me on Twitter and I can give you a quote about Joey Anderson. The only thing I was going to mention is, like today, like a lot of other teams, the Jets played their final preseason game. I went all out this year. I got a phone case. That was as much money as I put towards my Jets fandom and tickets to a game. I am going to a game on my birthday. So those are the two things I did. But I'm having a hard time here, Kev, where I see some teams, like the Eagles tonight, have not played their starters at all. Like, they played them so sparingly. Jalen Hurts is basically a 4-game quarterback, and he has barely played. They are basically carrying the weight of these joint practices as if they were games, and players are outraged about it. Older players, where they're like, you do actually have to play. You can't just stop when you're going to do a tackle and basically guess what's going to happen. And so, end of the day, I do think we're going to see some mediocre to lousy football the first couple of weeks by all of these guys not playing. I mean, Kev, you got to play. I can see if Aaron Rodgers doesn't play. But there's a lot of guys that have to play.
I'm a proponent of elimination of preseason, and I don't know. I haven't covered football in 4 or 5 years, but when I was covering it on a regular basis, not 4 or 5 years, 3 years, when I was covering on a regular basis, the tone that I got was that they didn't want to really deal with it because as a lot of veterans pointed out, I actually contributed to a USA Today story about this. Where, the way that the training camps are run now, you have real competition and real scrimmaging, in training camps. So there's probably more hatred in those games than you get actually in a preseason game.
Yeah, but they're not throwing anybody to the ground. They're not hitting your quarterback. They're not doing any of those things. You're not breaking tackles. Like, there's things you need to see. There are some things. At least I feel there are some things you need to see. Now, I'm not saying guys should be playing full games, but what I am saying is a lot of guys in this league have not even played one half full of football.
No, I mean to the point, like Josh Allen hasn't played a down in preseason, and I mean I think these teams are making the calculation that a little rust in the first couple quarters of the first game is better than losing your quarterback for the year or for a significant chunk of time. So that's the great, like, I mean,
you gotta have that rhythm. You gotta have all those other things, and joint practices. If you tell me you're playing against Bill Belichick and you think you're seeing all their plays in joint practices, you're crazy.
Yeah,
no coaches.
Yeah, but you don't see him in preseason either.
Right. I mean,
no, we see a couple at least. You're not seeing anything in practice.
I mean, Funky here is saying the Bills are supposedly playing starters. They're not playing They're playing some of their starters on defense. They are not playing their starters on off. They're not playing Allen. I don't think they're playing Diggs. So they're not playing.
He's certainly not playing. He's just tweeting, right?
Who? Oh, yeah. Let's not get into that. Let's not get into that, please. I mean, it's just I mean. And you know what the funny thing is, Beasley is taking the lion's share of the abuse, and from his point of view, or from our point of view, he should. But the thing is that there are a lot of players other than Beasley who are in the same boat in terms of they don't want to take the vaccine, and
that's true.
And they think that the penalties and what the NHL or what the NFL is doing, is pretty onerous. So I mean, but he's the poster child, unfortunately, and I guess
best example is Cam Newton. Let's say Cam Newton goes out and has a bad half, Mac Jones replaces him, and Cam Newton doesn't play again the rest of the year. You could draw a definite line to him not following protocol, to missing time, to Mac Jones getting more time in preseason, to him losing his job. And that's going to happen to some players now. They don't realize it's going to – they may be proving their point by not being vaccinated, but then they're also hurting themselves playing time-wise and maybe, with their team.
Yep. Kevin, is everything okay? Everything good?
Well, I'm having trouble with my power. It says I'm going to run out in 1 minute here, and I can't seem to see. So we'll see what happens now. And now it seems fine.
We'll time you.
Okay.
I'm timing it.
Okay. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, August 27th, 2021.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen, Hockey Buzz.
And I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay, we'll start with a little bit of breaking news. I don't know how impactful it is, but we'll maybe try to interpret whether it is or not. Elliot Friedman posted about half an hour ago that Jack Eichel has changed agents from the Boston area, from Peter Fish, who's a Boston area agent, to Pat Brisson of CAA, which, he's the agent of Tavares and Kane and Taves and Crosby and McKinnon and Seth Jones.
Roger Rue, who's got a contract coming.
Roger Rue, but Seth Jones, who forced his way out of Columbus, not in a similar, not as acrimonious a situation as Eichel and Buffalo, but got Seth Jones, or probably helped the Seth Jones deal happen, and then negotiated the extension with the Blackhawks. Kev, I mean, Brisson is a power broker. He's a big time agent. I don't know whether this in and of itself greases the wheels to get a deal done, but I'm not sure how much it changes it, because at this point we still have the medical situation that really is gumming up the works.
I would say that it really does. I think this is a game changer. I mean, Pat Brisson has a reputation of a deal maker, and he's almost like in some instances, like a mediator, where he kind of brings everyone together. And I think that's what his role will be here. He'll try to get the teams and, convince them to part with this asset, and probably talk to the Sabres. Look, we really want to get this done. You're not going to get all four of those players. I mean, that's the kind of stuff he does. He knows the game. He knows everybody in the league.
Right.
And I think this will help. He's very experienced in these situations. He's dealt with very complicated negotiations in the past, and he's been in it. I can't give you a specific instance, but Seth Jones is reasonably comparable in terms of there weren't a lot of teams that could make the deal, and it got worked out. So I think it will. I don't know if it'll lead to something happening immediately, but there's been a kind of a rumbling that something is going to happen quickly. I know Boston Hockey Now reported that that both sides were getting weary of this, doo-doo as they called it, but they didn't say doo-doo. And I think there's a sense that people want to get this done, and Eichel wants to get surgery. So I think it's probably a wise decision. Like, I don't know whether his previous agent was good, bad, or indifferent, but we do know Pat Brisson has a history in these situations.
Russ, to that point, Brisson has been considered, at least I've heard a couple times he was being considered for a general manager's position, but I'm sure that his agency, I'm sure he's making a lot more money as an agent or a lot more bank than he would be as a general manager. But that might be a logical next step for him down the line. But maybe he can broker something where the Sabres get close to what they want and Eichel gets what he wants in terms of getting the surgery and going someplace else.
I mean, he's going to try, and everybody will take Pat Brisson's call, but at the end of the day, it's not going to change the Sabres' mind as far as the medical. Mm-hmm. So basically, Brisson's best chance here is to change the team's minds in what they'll give up to get him so that he can get the surgery he wants and you can get him on the ice. But it's still a slim chance that this happens before the season starts. This is a Hail Mary.
Yeah, I mean, one way or the other. I mean, right now we're at August 27th, so we're next week will be September. Training camps start I think I heard around the 20th to 22nd of September for most of the camps. That's 3 weeks. Even if he has surgery today, he's not going to be available for all of training camp and the beginning of the regular season. So he's going to miss significant time, even if the deal happens later today. So that's not going to change. And it could be, if it's a fusion, which he doesn't want to have, that's 3 months. If it's the disc replacement, it's 6 weeks. He's going to miss time. And even if he has the surgery that he wants, he's not going to be in 100% shape. So this is something that's definitely going to affect Eichel's year one way or the other. So
yeah, but I think everybody knows that. It's not like this is going to be news or that they expect, Brisson to come in and change that. That's just the way it's going to be. But it is going to be hard to get it done. But I guess what I would say in summation is, if any agent can make an impact, it's Brisson. There's probably 4 or 5 of them out there that, can get things done that you wouldn't think can get done just because of their relationships with people. So, if anyone can do it, it's Pat.
Russ, you wanted to bring up something about the Islanders.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Islanders, and maybe Kev will come up with a team, but I can't come up with a team. Maybe we want to talk about the Expos when they had to play in San Juan, but the Islanders aren't playing in their home building until November 18th. Was that, Mike, when you looked it up?
November 20th against
November 20th. So they're going to play 13 games on the road. No home games until that point in the season. I think that's going to take a little bit of a toll on them early. There's no question about it. Even if, like Mike was saying, hey, even if you go 500, and I'm like, well, don't you want to go more than 500 on road trips? He goes, yeah, but this is like a crazy road trip. So, Kev, I may adjust who I think is going to win the division and the idea of the East simply because I had forgotten about that, and I really thought about it yesterday. It hit me, and it's like they're at a little bit of a disadvantage here.
Yeah, they really are, and we've seen it before. We used to have the Rangers circus, which took them on the road for a really extended. I don't think it was 13 games, but they were out there a long time. And there's been some other arena issues that have caused situations like that as well. But you end up saying things like, if we come out of this 500, I'll be happy. Right. And whenever you got that kind of mindset, it's not a good way to kind of start. And Who knows though? It could also sort of bring them together if they come out of that 8-5. They're going to be feeling pretty good about themselves as well. But they'll sure be thankful to get home. But then, if you think about it, then all of a sudden you're down to a 69 game schedule and you're going to play 41 of them at home. So that's not bad.
Yeah, on the back end of it, it'll seem great. On the front end of it, when you're just trying to get a season started, probably not going to seem great. But Kev, with the Islanders, we don't even know who the hell's on the full roster yet. Like when is this roster reveal going to happen?
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, there's just loose rules, and we're all living by loose rules. So
well, that's a good segue into one of the areas where I wanted to discuss, because we saw, and we'll talk about this first, the Svechnikov signing with Carolina. He was one of a list of prominent restricted free agents who did not qualify for arbitration, who are yet obviously unsigned. Svechnikov got the 8-year max at $7.75 million, Kevin. Russ and I talked about it yesterday. And if you can get a premium player, and I know he didn't have a great year last year, but if you can get a premium player signed for under market value, which I think this is, God bless. But honestly, I'm a little surprised Svechnikov took 8 years at 7.75. I would have thought he would probably wanted to take a shorter deal because he could either go to unrestricted free agency or maximize his value going forward.
Well, I went on the Zoom call with Svechnikov and Waddell, and it was pointed out that Waddell had even said last fall that he thought there would be a bridge deal. But he said that when he sat down after the season, because that's when they agreed to talk about it, that both he and Mark Andler, the agent, had decided quickly that it should be a long-term deal. Right. Svechnikov, and he said this, that that was his decision. He wanted a long-term deal. He loves Carolina. He loves the team. He loves Brind'Amour. He likes everything about it. He feels really good about even the changes that they made this summer. And he just felt, God, I had thought he was going to get, maybe 8.25. Right. I guess if you stretched it 8.5, what did Braden Point get?
I think it was 9. Oh, on the bridge deal, it was like 6.75 or something like that. I'll look here 1 second.
Yeah, but he did have an off year for his standards, so
yeah, he did. So, a little bit of a break. Well, and I'm not opposed to, because the Bruins have basically stayed competitive by doing this. Everybody taking not a lot less, but a little less. So if we do think that he was going to get 8 or 8.25 or something like that. What did he give up? He gave $500,000 back, maybe per season. So an 8-year contract, he gave $4 million back. You could say he did do that. He didn't get the same amount of money that Aho got. He's a little short there, but Aho had a much better year.
Aho still a better all-around player until Svechnikov proves it. So I think that's fair. The interesting thing is, too, Kev, with the Couturier deal on local radio here, and, of course, never hockey experts, but you would think would look at least at other salaries, and they're all, and one of the stations I was listening to was like, well, hey, it would have been much better at a 5-year deal. I don't get 8. And it's like, well, if you don't get 8 at 7.75, what do you think 5 years is going to cost? It's going to cost like $9 million or more.
Right.
Like I don't understand how you could be that much in a bubble to not understand the market and just look at a couple of other salaries that have been paid recently.
You're only buying 1 year of unrestricted free agency on a 5-year deal, as opposed to on an 8-year deal, you're buying 4. So it's going to be, it's going to be more. It's definitely going to be more.
Yeah.
I'm just saying locally.
I will tell you that was a big signing for Carolina, because we've all talked about on this program the thought that, look, they didn't get Aho, they didn't sign Aho, they had an offer sheet and they took it. Hamilton left, they wouldn't pay him. Now you can argue that they weren't going to pay him $9 million, but it was important, I think, and the way Don Waddell phrased it when I asked the question about. Were you sending a message? He goes, well, I don't know if I'm sending a message, but our phone hasn't stopped ringing since we signed him to an 8-year deal. So I'm guessing that season ticket sales weren't going all that well. We're stretching this negotiation out, and I think people are worried. Well, is this going to be, a situation where we end up trading him, or what's going on? And so by getting him signed, I think they've sent a message. Look, it's a case by case, situation. We didn't want to pay $9 million for Hamilton, but we're going to pay. I mean, they paid almost $8 million. I mean, they didn't pay $8 million, but they paid $7.75. So it's a good message to send.
I did mention this yesterday, Kev. It was big because I kind of went to the standard where at the draft, Tom Dundon spent a long time with Svechnikov's family. I saw him walking around with their family. I saw him talking to him a lot before the draft. And not only was there no doubt he was going to be drafted by him, but there was also, if he was there, but there was also like Dundon saying, hey, this is kind of like my guy. This is like, I'm buying this franchise. This is our first pick. This is a big deal. And so, like, because he was his guy, I felt like if this one slipped through the cracks, I would probably never let him off the hook. But he did sign his guy. So I say that's where he stuck to his word on that. Let
me also point out, you do hear athletes say, I'm going to buy my mom a house, or, my dad has had an eye on a sports car and I want to give him a car and everything. But Svechnikov actually said, when someone asked, well, you going to do anything big? You're going to get a big signing bonus right now. And he goes, I think it was $4 million he was getting.
Yeah.
I may be wrong on that, but he was going to get like a $4 million thing. He goes, I'll probably just give it to my parents and my brother. Like that's what he said, he was, and I thought, wow, you know what I mean? So maybe if you've got that attitude, maybe the difference between 62 million and 64 million really doesn't.
Not that big a difference.
Yeah.
And the friendliness of this deal is the fact that other than that $4 million signing bonus, it's all salary, all of it, which is bizarre. Like I said, somebody's mentioning Marner and Matthews in the chat, and those contracts other than minimum salary were all signing bonus. So, and most of the big deals have significant bonus, and this one didn't. So, the Canes sort of hit the home run here. And, I don't want to get dragged down into the Marner situation in terms of the contract, because he's making almost $11 million. Remember, the Leafs had signed Tavares at 11. They'd signed Matthews at over 11. So when Darren Ferris was going there, he's saying, well, he scored more points than Matthews, so he should be making close to what Matthews. I mean, they put themselves in that situation starting with the Nylander contract, and it snowballed. And at that point, they should have either said, no, we can't, or sign him to a bridge deal, but they wanted to get their core locked up, and that's where they ended up. So
here's what I'll say.
Yeah.
We always knew that Matthews was a better goal scorer, one of the best goal scorers that was going to be in the league, and he's proven that.
Yes.
We don't really know what Marner is yet. We know he's a really good playmaking wing, which there aren't that many of, but he's never led a league in scoring. I don't know if he's even been in the top 5.
He was in the top 5 this year.
Okay. So 1 year out of his contract so far. And he's been paid like a guy like that. Now, if he doesn't continually end up in the top 5 and be up for some awards or everything else in that market for that money, there's always going to be that scrutiny of this contract, I think. I don't know what Kev thinks. But.
I agree. Well, they overpaid, obviously.
Yeah.
They were paying in anticipation, and that he hasn't lived up to expectation.
Yeah, I mean, he's led the team in scoring 3 of the 4 years that he's been on the squad, and 4 of the 5 years, I think it is. And him playing consistently on Matthews' wing got Matthews the Rocket Richard, because I'm pretty sure that Marner probably assisted on 95% of Matthews' goals. But the chickens came home to roost this year by him not showing up and not scoring in the playoffs and not scoring in 18 consecutive playoff games. And that is something that Leaf fans will hold over Marner's head until he does score in the playoffs and until they do win a series. And if he doesn't score, and then he'll continue to get beaten over the head with it.
Yeah, but let's really kind of trumpet the issue here, which is, hey, look, what he's done is more than enough to warrant the $8-9 million salaries.
Yes.
He was given above and beyond that. It's kind of like when you're on a Hall of Fame selection committee and they always give the speech of, we're not talking about very good players here or great players. We're talking about extraordinary.
Right.
And when you earn the salary that he's getting, which is, north of 10 million, the guys getting that are Kane and Ovechkin and, Matthews and that group, Connor McDavid. So you got to do more. You got to do more than, just lead the team. You got to deliver championships or win scoring titles or, distinguish yourself.
He is 24, so there is time for him to do
sure.
that.
Absolutely.
The time is now. But the time is now. It is for him. There's no
my only point is I think, he has to expect to be under intense scrutiny. When you get that contract, that's what happens.
Right.
If he would have gotten 8 or 9 million, we might be saying like, wow, that's, he's done everything they've asked for him.
That's what they're saying in Edmonton with Draisaitl. He's won a Hart Trophy and he's making 8.5. Now that deal looks fantastic. But when they signed that contract after one good year, they were like, "Oh my God, what are they doing?" Now it looks pretty good. And if Marner,
he'll make it up on the next deal, though.
Yeah, right. But it was an 8-year deal, and if Marner wins an Art Ross and leads the Leafs to a conference final or a Stanley Cup final, then people will you won't even hear this criticism. You'll hear a lot less of that. Okay, regarding the RFAs, we started with the Islanders, and obviously that's a unique situation because of Lou. But Sorokin is unsigned, Beauvillier is unsigned. I somehow think, like we've said, this is all going to get announced on the opening day of training camp.
Yeah, I've got nothing to add.
All in one announcement, like the opening day of training camp 5 or 6 years ago when he announced the 5-for-1 Michael Grabner deal.
We know Andy Green is signed, and it hasn't been formally announced. That's the one where we actually know that he's signed, but it's not formally announced.
So it's Andy Green, it's Zach Parise, it's Zajac. That there's a rumor about Zajac. It's Beauvillier and Sorokin. So you're talking about five players. But there are other situations in the league right now that I don't think that we get the feeling that everything is sort of in place. First one is Buffalo, Russ, with Rasmus Dahlin and Casey Middlestat both unsigned. Dahlin, this is where I'm a little confused. I think the Sabres ideally would love to get Dahlin locked up on an 8-year deal. But I don't think they would want to do that until the Eichel situation is clarified. And maybe they're just, maybe both sides would go for a bridge deal.
Well, I would say this. There's no reason Middlestat shouldn't be signed right now. You're not waiting on Middlestat because you have to sign Dahlin before Middlestat. That's crazy, right? So that's not the reason. I would think at some point you could come to some middle ground on Middlestat and maybe go with a 5-year deal for him, right? I get it if you don't want to give Mate because you're like, hey, you still got something to prove to us, but we'll give you 5. They've given 5 to a lot worse. Let's put it that way, with a lot less upside. But as far as Dahlin goes, I have a feeling the same as Olmark. He is looking for a top dollar for that 8-year deal. They're balking at it, and it probably does turn into a bridge because he probably does feel like, hey, if you want me to be the franchise guy, you're getting no discount from me. You put me through a lot the last couple of years. He was one of the most frustrated players before Don Granato got in there, and he was talking about it, and it's not like him to talk about it. So this is where they're paying for it now.
Kevin, here's the situation. Here's where the situation is sort of confusing with the Sabres. They've got boatloads of cap space. In fact, that they're, I think, what do we say, 10 million under the cap floor right now, even with Eichel's contract counting. Middlestat only started playing up to expectations once Eichel got hurt. Once they played him on the top 2 lines in an offensive role, he really started to shine. But I don't know if the Sabres organization is willing to say, okay, we're going to sign him to a 5-year deal right now because a 5-year deal could cost $4.5, $5 million, and maybe they don't think he's earned that yet. So maybe it's like sort of a wait and see, and they do a bridge deal with him as well.
Oh, I think they have to, because we have no idea. And if you're Middlestat, maybe you're just scratching the surface. So, like everybody should want a bridge deal here.
Yes.
Unless,
but if it's 2 bridge deals, Kev, that would have been easy to do already.
No, that's true. You're right. So
it can't be 2 bridge deals that they're talking.
So,
that's my feeling anyway.
Moving to Vancouver, the Pettersson-Hughes situation still has not clarified. Again, we've got 3 weeks plus till training camp, and nothing to be said. I'm sure that some of these or most of these deals are going to get done before then or during training camp. But this one, they only have $10.6 million in cap space. But if you look further, Michael Furlan's deal is it counts right now, and he's an LTIR guy, so that's an extra $3.5 million. So that makes it over $14 million. And there was another situation in terms of their cap where I can't remember exactly, but there was another situation that would bring the cap hit to almost 16 million. So if they can open up 16 million in cap space, then I think they probably, I know what it was. The Cap Friendly was counting players who Russ and I both said were not going to make the roster, like Brad Hunt and maybe Jack Rathbone, but some of the forwards like Justin Bailey and Phil DiGiuseppe. So if you demote a couple of those and you go down to a 21 or 22 man roster, then you have 16 million in cap space. I think 8 million each, Kev, would probably be enough to get both of those guys signed on bridge deals at least.
Yeah, you would think so. I don't know, just a hunch. Like I feel that Pettersson, could push for a little bit more. I feel like, but it's just a gut feeling, not based on anything.
Well, I feel the opposite, Kev. I look at Quinn Hughes, who has 97 points in 129 games as a defenseman. You're talking about like the top.
Yeah, but you're talking about who should. I'm just going by personality, not by.
No, I get it. That's fair. What I'm saying is Jim Bennings got his team in a bad situation here because they're going to get signed to bridge deals, but this is not where you want to sign Quinn Hughes to a bridge deal because Quinn Hughes is on an arc that by the time you get to negotiate with him again, you may not be able to afford him.
Well, Russ, do you think that his representatives will use the deal that Makar signed in Colorado as a comparable? Because they're going to be they've been in the Calder race together. They're going to be in the Norris race together. Makar got $9 million per on a 6-year deal. That probably would be a good comparable.
Yeah, I mean you're talking about a guy that's just he's pretty close to a point a game as a defenseman. It doesn't really happen much in this league. Can you say he's got to improve defensively? Sure. There's some improvement that'll happen there. But at the end of the day, you're basically, if you go with him, let's say, what is he going to get, a 3-year bridge? That in that 3rd year, if he continues to score like this, you may not be able to afford him because at that point, maybe you have signed Pettersson to a long-term deal. And I don't know. I don't know if they can keep both anymore. I wouldn't have walked them both this way, the way they did it. And holding on to Louis Eriksson for too long is a part of it. They needed to get Hughes signed earlier, I think, because now you're really in trouble because if he has a 70-point year, he's just going to be waiting to become a free agent.
There is a benefit, Kev, to being proactive in some of these negotiations. And if you wait 1 year too long and they put up 2 or 3 good years, then you're paying through the nose. And that's what Vancouver is going to do with Hughes because he's had 2 really good years in a row. And, now if even on a bridge deal, if it's a 3-year bridge, like Russ is saying, they could pay him $7.5 million on a 3-year bridge and really get no long-term security if they're going to get
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a strategy that goes in about when you negotiate the deal to be sure. And, but the problem is players know that too. So, and they oftentimes will say, oh, maybe we should wait, so.
And he was almost a point a game in the playoffs when they were in the playoffs. So
right.
If this happens, you could almost guarantee that Quinn Hughes will test the market down the line.
Based on
Pedersen's got to still prove himself now. Pedersen has to get a little bit more back into his game, I think, to get back to the status he was.
I mean, does he already have his eye on going to New Jersey?
I don't know if New Jersey will pay all of that for all the Hugheses, but it's not a bad way to go if you do it. So it's possible.
Yeah. Or they could, or Luke and Jack could end up in Vancouver. Who knows? No. Now the other ones, the other prominent ones, we've talked about Kaprizov and the fallacy of the KHL offer. I think eventually it'll get done. It's just a question of how long. Robert Thomas in St. Louis, the Blues don't have a lot of cap space, but he's improved every year, Russ. So I think, he's going to be a significant salary. The one that interests me the most is Brady Tkachuk in Ottawa.
Well, let's talk about Thomas for a minute.
Yeah, because I have a question for Russ too. So, I'm just kind of
remember he is only 22.
Yeah, but the problem is that I have with all this is we've been talking for for 3 years about how good this kid's going to be, and yet I look around and another GM mentioned this to me. He said I love Thomas, but at 22 there are a lot of players at 22 are better than he is. You know what I mean? Like you like him as a player, and there's a promise, right, for sure. But it's scoring is what we were talking about. We were talking at the time about scoring. So that's my question to you. What is his upside? Like when he's done at 25, what will he be like?
I think 55 to 60 points is where he could go.
Okay.
He didn't show anything close to that last year, but neither did the team. He was at 42 points the year before that. And I think he was on that kind of arc the year before that, and that was in 66 games, right? So it wasn't even a full season. He definitely could score 15, 20 goals, but he is also a guy that it's how he scores them because he goes to the tough areas. He does have more to his game than just that, and he also is a guy that does well in the playoffs. Like he had 3 points in 4 playoff games. Like he is a guy that's sort of like a money player too, and I think that's going to bode well for him someday, even if he doesn't win on this contract. And
the thing is, since he had a bad year last year, he may want to keep this deal as short as possible. He may want the bridge because unless it's going to be a situation like Arizona where they sign, they're signing guys like Dvorak or
they paid for future success on Dvorak. They did.
Right, Nick Schmaltz and some of the other deals that they signed long-term guys on, not based on the year that they had, but based on what they projected those players were going to be like in 4 or 5 years. I mean, I don't know if St. Louis wants to do that or if they'll be amenable to a bridge deal. Now, the last one is Brady Tkachuk. Ottawa's got boatloads of cap space. It's all to me, and this is the year that supposedly Eugene Melnyk said, "I will start spending money." And if you ask me, the prototype of a franchise power forward, it's Brady Tkachuk. I mean, he could play center, but I think he's probably better on the wing, and I think he's a guy who could make $8.5 million, $9 million on a long-term deal. It's all a question, Kev, if he wants to stay in Ottawa long term, if he wants to commit to that franchise.
Yeah, no, that's the number one question. I mean, and that we could ask the same thing about did the Tkachuks want to play together? Are they going to meet at some other team? Do they have does Brady have his eye on going to Calgary? I doubt it, but all that probably
they both go to St. Louis.
Yeah, no, that's a better one, Russ. Because their dad obviously is there, and they're very close knit family. So, you can see all that, and that's a hard decision for players at that age. Like, they don't even know what they want at that point. I think, I mean, you may have some rough idea, but we're not quite sure exactly what kind of player. I mean, we know what kind of player he's going to be, but we don't know, how much of a scorer he'll be. We know he'll be a good scorer. Will he be a great scorer? So
I think he could get 30 goals. I think he's capable.
Yeah,
of 30
I do too. But you can't be quite sure of that. So I think it's a difficult situation for probably both the team and the player to know exactly what to do.
I think considering money that they wasted, on Alexei Yashin and players like that, we know that Brady Tkachuk already can score 20 goals. So I don't think jumping to 30 is too much, especially if their talent base rises. We know that he plays hard. He's going to get you 70 to 85 good PIMs. We would call those good PIMs because he's going to be sticking up for your players and causing problems for the other team and drawing penalties. And he scores in the dirty area. Like the minute he goes into the offensive zone, he blows up a lot of the coverage when he gets in there because you don't know what he's going to do, and he's going to be hell around the net. And I think there is something to be said about that. He's got to be paid as much as Shabbat. If he's not, he's going to leave someday. He wants to be the head of that team. So you're going to have to make him feel like that.
Would you give him the Svechnikov, the contract, the $64 million?
Oh,
yep. I'd give it to him today.
Yeah. But I think he deserves more. But it's a question of what Ottawa will pay, and the highest paid salary on that roster is Shabbat at $8 million. So, for your best forward, I think probably you're going to have to pay that or pay more. So,
just to answer W1 too, he's more than just a PIM and goal guy. I just brought that up. I mean, he's already had 44, 45 point seasons and never a full season yet, and he had 36 last year and not a full season. So, I mean, he is capable of getting, 70 points too.
And he's a pretty decent playmaker as well. He's not a black hole where you pass it to him and the puck never comes.
No, he has some finesse in his game.
Are we at the situation where Ottawa should pay a little more because they're Ottawa? Just to make sure.
I think they should, because I think just like we had, pointed out, if the next negotiation for Brady Tkachuk isn't great, his dad's going to put a bug in his ear, and he's probably going to have a bug in his own ear like, hey, I'm worth more. And if they don't want me as their franchise guy, somebody will.
Okay, here's a little bit of a fun exercise here. There was a site called Action Network HQ that analyzed negative online sentiment of all the major sports and in specific specific teams. They have the top 10 NHL teams, but 5 of the top 10 in professional sports were NHL teams. I'm just going to pull it up
that people felt good about.
No, it was purely negative sentiment online. So criticism, et cetera, et cetera.
We know who one of them is.
Well, yeah. Okay. Let me just lay the ground here, Russ.
Go ahead.
The leading team in terms of negative sentiment of all professional sports was the Las Vegas Raiders. Obviously, the Raiders are.
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay. And the Philadelphia 76ers were 4th.
Ben Simmons,
Chicago Bears were 5th. And the Toronto Raptors were 9th, and the Denver Broncos were 10th. Those are all the non-NHL teams. Now, 5 teams of the top 10 are NHL teams. So take your best guess at who is the leading one.
Maple.
I'm going to go Leafs.
Surprisingly, no. They were 3rd among NHL teams, 6th overall.
Okay.
The first place one is a little surprising.
Are they only counting Canadian IP addresses and not like ones from Buffalo?
No. I'm not the epicenter of negativity when it comes to the Leafs, Russ.
Okay, so negativity.
Negative sentiment. So,
I'm seeing New York Rangers.
Bruins.
No, Bruins are. Let's see. Are they even top 10 on the list? Hold on 1 second. Sorry about this. We're doing this on the fly. Oh, there we go. The Bruins were not in the top 10.
Wow.
I would think Rangers and Flyers could be in that list.
Neither are on the list.
Wow, that's surprising.
I'll give you a clue here, and I don't have a negative perception of this team, but this particular team was in the Stanley Cup final within the last 3 years.
So the Penguins,
the Vegas Golden Knights,
the Dallas Stars. Why now?
They're kind of a non-entity. I don't even know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that unless it's just like all criticism of Corey Perry and his cheap shots during the playoffs or something.
The Penguins aren't in that list.
No, the Penguins are not on the list. Let me see.
Wow, Canadians.
The Penguins are always among the most popular teams in the.
Well, okay, the second.
Yeah, but lately I think.
The second place one makes sense, which is the Arizona Coyotes, obviously.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. That's true. We should have been thinking that.
Yeah. Okay. So it was Dallas, Arizona, then the Maple Leafs, the Vancouver Canucks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that's purely all from BC. The Buffalo Sabres. And Buffalo Sabres were 8th. Just finish off the top 10 with the NHL. Edmonton. Columbus, the New York Islanders, sorry, NL King. It's not me that's saying that. It's the Calgary Flames and then the St. Louis Blues. So 1, 2.
You know what's interesting? I want to know how they did this because it couldn't be from total breadth of people because there's just not enough Coyotes fans to even match with those other teams as far as online presence.
I think it's criticism, like people like me criticizing the organization for being such a joke.
Right. See, because I don't know, Kev, I got kind of duped. I was thinking big fan bases, ones that maybe are
tradition and history. People always hate the Bruins. They always hate the Flyers.
Right.
Right. So,
okay, interesting list though.
Yep. So, Russ, why don't we discuss the 2 prospects from the Carolina Hurricanes who were still in the C's, but I accidentally skipped over. I don't know. It was a Freudian.
I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, I don't know. I just went by them. I don't know why. But Carolina, Russ.
So, we'll talk about Seth Jarvis. He's a really good skater. It's interesting. I'm trying to see. Do I have my ranking of him here? Yeah, I ranked him 11th. He's a 5'10" guy, but he is a goal scoring type. There's no question about it. He, I don't have his stats in front of me from last year. If you care to pull him up, that's up to you. Sure. But he's a guy that could be a future All-Star. He's got that kind of shot. He's got quick hands. He's really good around the net. We have to see if he's going to still be able to sort of do that when he gets up to that next level. But everything is there. The vision, the shot, really, really, really solid player. Like I felt like this was a really good pick for them.
He had over a point per game with Portland. They only played 24 games, but then he went to the Chicago Wolves of the AHL and had 11 points, 7 goals in 9 games. So, yeah. And by the way,
the goal scoring is the big thing.
By the way, he's the first-round pick that the Leafs gave up to get Carolina to take Patrick Marleau's contract off their hands.
Yeah, well, it had to be somebody good, or you wouldn't be able to hold your third-place ranking there in the negativity. So,
and Ryan Suzuki.
Yeah, Ryan Suzuki, Nick's brother. He's definitely not Nick, but I think his skating is close. I think his offense is close. He's kind of a mix of a goal scorer and a playmaker. I think he's got a little bit of each in him, but he is a center, so there is something to be said about that. He's got a terrific wrist shot. You know what he's really good at? Like Nick can make that really fancy pass. He makes very simple plays to set up scoring chances. Just not thinking about it. Just boom, boom. He doesn't have to drop a no look. He doesn't have to do any of that. And he's a guy that I think people have sort of forgotten about a little bit. And I think I don't think he'll be as impactful right away as Nick was. That's nearly impossible to do. I don't even think Vegas thought that, or they might not have traded him in that deal. But maybe they did. Maybe they were that desperate because Pacioretty. But at the end of the day, I think Ryan Suzuki is probably second-line material if he really reaches his zenith as a center, but most likely a third-line center.
Okay. And he played 26 games in the American Hockey League last year, so he got a good look at, I do think that some of these young –
one thing, Mike, so Dust on the Sidewalk said he liked his skating, like it's smooth. I agree with you on that. I'm just saying he doesn't have the speed that Nick does. Nick's got some surprising speed. I think we found that out this year.
I do think that some of these players who got looks in the American Hockey League at a younger age may benefit. If you remember, there was a significant jump in a lot of the players during the lockout year where they played in the American Hockey League instead of some of them playing in the NHL, and that benefited their long-term development. I think, guys like Nick Robertson playing in the American Hockey League as a 19-year-old and Suzuki as a 19-year-old and Jarvis as an 18-year-old may help them down the line, Russ.
I think I think it'll give them confidence. But from a goaltending perspective, it was bad. Like back, I covered that lockout year exclusively, like with the Phantoms. There was better goaltending. There was. I mean, Varlamov was in the league. Like was he in the league then? No, I think maybe the year after for him. But, I think it was the year after for him. But Niedermaki was a big one. Kari Lettinen was in there. There were 4 or 5, goalies that played good NHL careers that were in there. This year in the AHL, I don't know if you're even going to have that many. And there might be more from that 05 year.
Kevin, what do you think?
Well, I was just going to bring up, I saw an interesting tweet that I think is worth talking about. Mike Harrington just put out there, just a reminder, I mean, we know this, but maybe not everybody does. Brisson and Mark Bergevin are great friends.
Yes.
There's already a drumbeat out there that perhaps he could mediate that deal. And then, in full disclosure, we also need to point out that Brisson's son was a first-round draft pick of the Vegas Golden Knights.
Right now, here's okay. Not to say that if they don't get the best offer from a team in their own division that they won't make a deal with a Montreal or a Boston, but I think all things being equal, Kevin Adams doesn't want to trade Jack Eichel inside his own division.
I would agree with that, but this might be a special circumstance because they're so bottomed out that, it's going to be, 3 or 4 years before they're.
Yeah, but I mean, I know that didn't stop Toronto from trading for Phil Kessel, but look at how that turned out.
Mike, I was going to mention Cam Ward was another one in that lockout season. So look what he did when he was one of the top goalies in the AHL that year. Yeah.
All right, guys, great show. We will be back on Monday with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Kevin Allen, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.